Hi, WhiskyJason here. Whiskey from the viewpoint of an American here in Germany. I should actually be in Ireland at this time, but instead I'm doing a virtual trip through Ireland. And my guest today is...
Ned Gahan from Waterford Distillery. Hello, Jason.
Hi, very, very good. So I can't be there, but I put it in the back of my picture here. I was there in July of 2018. I visited your distillery. You took almost a couple hours with me. I must admit it was a highlight of my trip 2018 to Ireland, being in your blending room together with you. That was so amazing. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell me who you are. How did you get involved with this distillery?
So hello, everyone from isolated house here, not in the distillery. I'm Ned Gahan. I'm the head distiller of Waterford Distillery, and I got involved with the distillery in 2015 at the start from a conversation with Mark Rainier, and we went in to change what was a Guinness brewery to a distillery. So I got involved in that, and as time went on, Mark offered me the head distiller's job. So that's kind of how I got involved in it.
Now, you do not call yourself the master distiller. You call yourself the head distiller. Why?
Yeah, so I suppose it's just it's something I don't like using because I think we've talked before. For me, a master distiller should be someone who has earned the title. Being from Waterford and Waterford Distillery, there's Waterford Crystal is worldwide known, and they would have had master blowers and master cutters, people who would have served 20, 25 years working in their profession, and then they would become master distiller. And the other thing is, our master blower cutter, sorry. The other thing is, I think when you're a master, you've learned an awful lot. I'm only at the early stages of whiskey. So a head distiller even is enough.
All right, very good. So I was talking with John Teeling the other day, and he actually said that he wanted to originally buy that Guinness plant, but unfortunately his finances were not, his pockets were not deep enough. So he went up to and bought his Great Northern Distillery only. Now, Mark, what's his story? Tell us a little bit about the background there.
So Mark, for people who would or wouldn't know, Mark spent, I suppose, he's 40 years in the alcohol business. The first 20 were in wine. So he would have had a wine shop and he would have been involved in a lot of wine businesses in England. So then he went to Islay on his holidays, on a cycling golf holiday with his brother, and came across...
There's a little picture of Mark, by the way. I think it's with his babies.
With the stills, So he came across Bruichladdich, which was closed, and someone told him to... Can we curse on live?
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, someone told him to fuck off. He couldn't get in. I think that piqued his interest. So he spent 10 years trying to buy it. So he eventually did buy Bruichladdich, and I suppose got it up and running. I think about up to about 2013, Mark was there.
Mm-hmm.
So left Bruichladdich and was looking for a different venture, and a good friend of Mark's who recently passed away in Bruichladdich, Duncan McIlvery, had said the southeast of Ireland was the best barley he'd ever seen ever. So Mark remembered that conversation and started looking for a distillery or a brewery or somewhere to set up. And Guinness had closed the brewery in 2013. So combination and aligning of the stars, let's say, Waterford. So a facility there that he bought, and at the time, John Teeling was interested. So Mark bought it, and so we started making whiskey there in 2016.
Very, very good. So I visited you 2018. Now, there's one word that's important when I remember Waterford: terroir.
Terroir, yeah.
Tell me, it's wine. It's not whiskey, is it?
Terroir is associated with wine, but it's to do with that basically grows. It's it's your vegetables, it's your flowers. So if someone was to look at hydrangeas, and some can be blue and some can be pink. Simple example: why are the different colors? It's the acidity of the soil that turns them the different colors. So terroir is in everything. So it's what influences something that grows. So it's well documented and well known in wine. So Mark was always interested in it, and said it should work for whiskey, and you've tasted it and I've tasted it, and it does.
It really does make a difference. Now,
so basically, I suppose what terroir is it's the influences on a crop. So barley, we do only Irish barley single malt. So what influences that? It's the surroundings, it's the soil, it's the weather. It's people have an influence on cover crops and fertilizers and how they farm. So everything that influences the crop influences the flavor.
Exactly. So we know that from Bruichladdich as well, with their local barley, other have their Isla barley, and these taste different. We have organic sometimes, and we do notice that there's a difference in these raw materials. Now, how many farmers are you working at in the moment from that area around Waterford?
Yeah, so I suppose originally the plan was to use the southeast of Ireland, which is primarily where barley is grown, but we've branched out slightly into a few places farmers have wanted to get involved. But I suppose the first thing we should say is we have partners in Minch Malt or Bourne Malt who's a for us, so we don't deal directly with the farmers, even though we have a very good relationship with the farmers.
I was going to say, I've seen videos of the farmers. If you go to Facebook or Twitter, you actually have conversations with the farmers. You have a wonderful relationship to those people that supply you with the grain. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose one of the reasons for that is so we keep in Waterford, we keep every farm separate.
Yeah.
So what we do is we take in, I think we've opened a correction on this now, or the final figure at the moment, but we have about 83 or 4 different farmers.
Wow, okay.
That we've used since we started, and that relates to about 140 different batches. So what we look for is roughly around 40 farms every year.
Mm-hmm.
That 40, we have 3 biodynamic farmers, so they grow together for one batch. I think we have 6 organic and 31 conventional farmers. So they supply us with roughly around 2,500 tons of malted barley a year, and that's what we use each year. So the relationship we would have with the farmers, when the grain comes in, we call it Philly O'Brien's or Steve McDonald's or Ed Harper's grain that comes into us, and the farmers are probably after buying into it really well, because not a lot of people might know, or they might know, but to be Irish whiskey, you don't have to use any Irish grain.
Nope. Most of it comes from France or Germany or other places. Yep.
Yeah, it can be maize, depending on what. So we obviously do single malt. So when I started, I didn't know you couldn't use Irish, which was a bit mad. But anyway, so we only use Irish grain. So if Irish grain was to collapse in the morning and we had no Irish grain, we'd take a year off. We'd take a year off. So that's the commitment we have. The other thing then, I suppose, is you mentioned terroir, but we have what we call the 3 T's: terroir, traceability, and transparency. So with the systems we have set up, we can actually tell you the day that the field was sown, the fertilizers that went on to it, the chemicals, when it was harvested, and everything that happened to it when it gets to a bottle. So I think one of the big things to the farmer is when the farmer supplies into his merchant with grain or milk or cattle or sheep or pigs, a chemist. So, there's great pride in knowing that his farm, his grain that he grew in 2015 is going to be in a bottle of whiskey. And there's other single farmers as well. But the fact that they can maybe go into their local pub and ask for a drop of their own whiskey, and they have, it's a thing like that. It's probably a bold enough statement, but I don't think anyone in the world making whiskey on the scale that we're doing it can say that. We can trace it back to your field and the date was sown. It's full traceability. And the other thing is, with our transparency, we can show you. So when we have our bottles, and when eventually we get them out, that's delayed at the moment, but we'll have a terroir code. And on the terroir code, you put in that code and it'll bring you to all the information to do with the farm. So it'll be easy enough to do it for the single farms. When you get cuvées, multi-farms, it'll be a bit more a challenge to get the information there. I kind of joke a little bit to say that I think we need a hotline for people to ring up and say, I want to know how long the fermentation took for Ed Harper's single farm release.
I think Bruichladdich actually did that. There's a bottle code. You type it on the website and it tells you everything. I'm sure you're going to do something very similar.
So we'll have something like that. Yeah.
Very good, very good. So I just posted a link here to a website, my website, where I was in your tasting room, and we actually did that. And I showed the passports, not the content, but just the book for each and every one. You have that. This is such a fantastic project. As Tina says, Greg over in Paris says, curious to what Waterford has to offer. Also, Simon is here, says, thanks for setting these chats up, Jason. Very informative. And Walter here from Germany is also there. Now, I think many of the distilleries would actually want to do something like that, but they can't. And it's because of one single factor, malting. Malting is the problem, because usually we throw it all together and then you get everything from back whatever, whoever, whenever. How did you solve that problem?
Yeah, so I suppose it kind of goes back to Mark being a visionary, I suppose, in what he was looking at, and his sales ability. So one of the things is, so I suppose we're in partnership with a few different people. So Minch Malt obviously do the malting. Dalton's and Kilkenny then store the grain for us. Yep. So the project doesn't work without being able to store the grain individually. So Mark went up to Dennis and John Dalton in May, I think, 2015, and explained what he wanted. So what he wanted was individual bays for individual farms. So they said grand, and when do you want it? Mark said for this harvest, which was going to start at the start.
Like 3 months.
Yeah, a couple of months' time. So the guys went ahead, did it, handshake, off they went, and they built what we call the cathedral. Mm-hmm. So the is basically a shed with individual bays that can hold the barley before it's malted. So we're after actually building a smaller one, or when I say we, the lads are after building a smaller one called the chapel. So we have the cathedral and the chapel, so we have enough bays to supply the grain. So I suppose what happens is Minch Malt then we're able to malt 100 tons of barley. So take in roughly 100 tons of barley and malt that in their Bobby plant. So that's why we can do it. We can do it all individually. So normally what happens, and this is to go back to the traceability and the transparency, is normally what would happen was the farmer would harvest and bring his grain into the merchant and dump it into big piles, could be thousands of tons. But what actually happens is Daltons will go out and collect the loads individually from the farmers. So they'll collect 4 lorry loads of grain, bring them in and dump them together in a farm, and they are dried individually and stored individually. So there's a heap of work for just a small amount of grain. So without Daltons,
100 tons, a small amount of grain.
Yeah, well, at that stage when they have thousands and thousands of tons coming in, it's just easier for them or for everyone just to dump it into one pile and dry. But keeping it individual, it's a lot more work.
It is.
By doing that, it's a higher cost to us. But that's what we're willing to do. So when the grain is stored, then it's stored for about 6 months. It starts to break dormancy. So basically, when you harvest, you put the grain to sleep. It starts to wake up. And we send it to a tie and it's malted. So one of the things that we don't do is we don't use an enzyme called gibberellic acid. You use it. It just makes the malting process a bit quicker, and it malts more of the grain. So,
which is also not allowed in Scotland, but is allowed in Germany, Ireland, America, Canada, and so on. Yes.
So we choose not to do it because what we're looking for is the flavor of the grain to come out in the spirit, and we don't want that artificial to change that, I suppose. So we don't use that. So malting should take maybe 3 days. Takes us. Or when I say us, it takes them probably up to 5 days, from 3.5 to 5 days, depending on. And each farm then has to be malted differently because of the different specifications coming in from each farm.
All right, very good. Now talk about the next step, which will be mashing. After you take that one farm's barley and malted barley, what do you do next with it? How do you mash it?
Yeah, so I suppose one of the toughest jobs in the distillery is Neil Conway's, who's the head brewer. So every farm comes in, we get a specification in on the grain from Minch Malt, who give us in the specs. So then we have to look at that and make slight adjustments because we don't have any variations in the whole process. We want to keep everything the same as possible so that the flavors, again, coming from the barley. So when it comes in, Neil gets his specification, has a look at it. He'll look at friability, and he'll look at different temperatures and do the first brew. And from the first brew, you kind of know if you need to tweak it slightly. So what we're not looking for is, we're not looking for extract as such. We're looking at, so a lot of distilleries will look at, we need extract, full stop. We're not looking for extract, even though from a professional point of view, we're looking to do the best we can. We're looking at, how to get the best out of the grain.
Does the pH affect somehow the malting process?
Sorry?
Does the pH affect the malting process? Michael Cully asks.
Yeah, it can do, but I suppose we have specifications for the grain that's supplied into us. So, we have specs for proteins, which would be the big one for us, and other bits and pieces. So we would get grain in within specification bands, yeah. But it's like everything, if you have different pHs, it'll work differently, yeah. So again, we don't use enzymes when we go through the brewing process. So everything is done naturally. So I suppose just maybe to take a step back a little bit and say that Diageo, the previous owners, spent 40 million euros on the brewery as was. So they closed in 2003. They spent 40 million euros changing from conventional brewery to making Guinness extract for Africa, and then closed in 2013 due to the downturn, I suppose, in beer markets globally, and consolidated it all into Dublin. And I suppose you were talking to John there during the week, and he bought Great Northern. Yeah. So Kilkenny and Great Northern closed. Diageo closes. So it's funny that two of the three now are distilleries.
Yeah. He was mentioning four actually that were Diageo back then, but I don't know. Okay.
Maybe. There was three anyway. Definitely, three was closed in December 2013. So 40 million euros was spent. So when we came in 2015 to get the distillery, or change from a brewery to a distillery, the brew house was already there. Now Diageo did wipe all the software, so we had to put the software back up. So we have a slightly unusual brew house in that we have a hydro mill and we have a mash filter, which works really well. Mark calls the mash filter our terroir extractor.
Now, I'm not very familiar with both of those. Explain what they are, please.
Yeah, so a hydro mill is basically you're milling underwater. At the time when we got it, it was new technology from Europe and Belgium. So you bring in the grain through what's called a steeping column, and it's injected with water. And when it goes in, then you have two discs. One is stationary and one rotates, and you break open the grain, and it goes into a mash then. So you go into a mash conversion vessel. So what we would do then is Neil would mill at maybe about 46 degrees. We'll hold it there for a period of time and let enzyme activity happen naturally, raise the temperatures, different enzymes, and raise them again. So there's a sweet point where we stop with temperature just because we don't want to kill everything in there. Then we go into our mash filter. And a mash filter is basically, it's a plate and frame mash filter, and it goes in and we squeeze the mash. So it's a bit like the mash will go in. We have a hydraulic ram which squeezes it first, and then we have air that will just squeeze it out, and we collect the wort. So we have very clean wort coming out.
There's a distillery in Scotland that also uses this process. I forgot. Do you know?
Ian in Inchdarney.
Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah. Darney, as far as I know. Ian, is it Ian? Can't think of.
Don't worry.
Use a mash filter, and I think they have a few mash filters. They're very good.
Now, is there a type of humidity level that is acceptable here for the barley that comes in?
There probably is. I'm not exactly sure the whole spec on that, but yeah, as I said, there's a specification that we have sent to Minch Malt that they have for us. Now, if he's asking about the humidity on the On the barley, was it the malting barley or the barley?
Either or, I don't know. So
it's probably on the barley. So obviously, if we have barley that's coming in, that has high humidity and stuff, or is we would be looking, say, about 18%, 17% around that. That has to be dried.
Good, no problem.
That has to be dried, and we store it below 14% moisture. So if the moisture is coming in as high, it takes more to dry it.
Right.
And obviously, you lose more then as well. So that's a little bit of extra cost as well.
Daithi was talking about the malted barley that arrives at the distillery, as you call that part, the brewery.
The distillery, yeah. So there is specifications. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Oh, don't worry. Very good. So talk about the fermentation phase next. What happens after you have this interesting malting phase?
Yeah, so I suppose so from the 100 tons of barley that the farmer would supply around that, we get about 75 tons of malted barley.
Okay.
Break that up into 8 brews of roughly 9.5 tons.
Oh.
That 8 brews goes into 4 washbacks. So we put in about 85,000 litres into the washback. Washback are stainless steel and they can hold about 100,000 litres. So we leave a bit of headspace for the activity that will happen when it's fermenting. So what happens there is we do a slow fermentation. Normally it's finished fermenting at 50 or 60 or 70 hours. We wait minimum of 120 hours. And the reason we do that is we're looking for secondary fermentation and malolactic fermentation for a bit of fruitiness in the wash. So, and each washback will wait that length. So we're getting the consistency in the whole process to highlight the flavors from the barley.
All right, very good. So those are the esters and conjugens that come together there, and they come through the distillation process. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, what is how long do you actually ferment?
So 120 hours.
Yeah, very, very good.
Yeah, 120 hours, yeah.
All right, now talk about the distillation process. You have a very interesting pot still there as well, which you kind of inherited, let's say that.
Yeah. So I suppose one of the things was when we were setting up the distillery, Macallan were doing their project, which had 4 sites with a 3 years waiting list. So if people are familiar with Bruichladdich and the still that was outside Bruichladdich, that is now our wash still. So Mark, I think, liberated both the stills that we use from Inverleven in Scotland. So those 3 stills, I think, that they took from there, our wash and spirit still, and also Ugly Betty, which is making the botanist now in Bruichladdich at the moment. So when Mark left, he bought stills with him and 4 sites, reconditioned them. So they were built, I think, in 1972 by Blair's in Edinburgh. And they had worked on and off for about 19 years. So we were saying, 4 sites were saying they'll probably give us 5 years. And they're starting to, Anthony, who's our engineer now, there's a few little holes coming in bits and pieces. So we're looking at getting new stills probably summer next year, something like that.
All right, very good. Will they be 4 sites, or where will you order them?
Oh, yeah, 4 sites, yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to get anything else.
Excellent. So who knows what the waiting time is? I remember 2 or 3 years ago, it was like a 5-year wait.
Yeah. So no, I think they're probably down a bit more, bit shorter than that, and especially in the current climate. They're probably, a year, I'd say, is probably what we're looking at, maybe something like that.
Very good. And you double distill, correct?
So we double distill. So in Ireland, I suppose people might assume that triple distill is Irish, but in the technical file it says you can double or triple distill. And also that you can spell whiskey with or without an E. We choose not to use the E. So that's just, we're a little bit different for that. But yeah, so we double distill. And I suppose a lot of people, are talking about double or triple distilling. And I suppose the conversation I would look at is how you actually distill. So we distill very, very slowly. Both our wash and spirit still are the wash is run really slow through the stills. So if you have if 10 of us have the exact same wash going to the same stills, the speed which you distill your cut points have a huge impact on your.
And that is influenced by the amount of heat that you actually add to the still? Okay.
So the simplest way to put it is when we run our wash still, we don't go over 1,000 liters an hour. Like our model is not an efficient way of making. It's the way we want to do it. It's what we've found gives us the nicest spirit, the best quality spirit we can get. So we run at 1,000 litres an hour in the wash still, and on our spirit still, then we would run on heads for about half an hour, which is very long, and we wouldn't go over 300 litres an hour on our heads. And then when we get onto hearts, we don't go over 500 litres an hour. So we're running at a trickle, basically. And one of the reasons is, if you look at it in terms of a fraction, I probably said this to you before, Jason, and this is your time. Isn't it big enough, actually?
wait, I can make you bigger. Let's go this way.
Oh, don't,
you got the whole screen now. Go for it.
Go back. No, go back. But if you look at this in terms of time, and this is your time, and the quicker you go, they will blend into one another, the different fractions. If you go slower, it's easier to distinguish where you want to make your cut points, and then it's easier to have your spirit. And also, by having the steam that you put onto the stills affects your flow rate. So we have, the motto was low and slow. Take your time, there's no panic. Okay. So when we're on hearts, we go really slow, no more than 500 litres an hour. And what that does is, the energy from the steam promotes the vapors that are lighter vapors. And the heavier vapors will go up so far, but won't get up to the neck and down the line arm to get turned back into liquid. So we're promoting, a bit like myself, a light, elegant spirit. Don't have you on laughing. That's what we're promoting with the way we distill. And we have very tight cuts. So we'll start at about maybe 76 ABV, but we don't go under 66. Okay. So even though it might be okay, we don't go under, because, hey, we're not going to lose it. It goes back to the low wines. The alchemy that works with that, don't know about it. It's that's a real science thing. But what I do know is that it makes our spirit bloody good.
Right.
And it works for us. We have balanced run, and we're happy with that.
All right. Good. I put a little link here to a tour of the distillery that I did 2018. It's about a good 50-some minutes long, where we go through the different things. And John Fleming has a question here on Ned. What happened to your head?
Well, you see, John is down in Killarney, and I was down there with John there a while ago, and I think I didn't recover properly from it. But basically, I was on a FaceTime call with Mark the other day, and he said, "What the fuck happened to your head?" So I, for anyone that might know me, I used to always shave my head up to a few years ago, and with the social distancing and isolation going on, no barbers, I said, I'm cutting my hair. So I gave it a good trim, and I'm happy with it for the time being. But it will grow back.
I think maybe 9 millimeters would be better than the 2 millimeters.
Yeah, well, the one thing I'd say to John there is that at least mine will grow back.
Very, very good. John, he got you there. Very, very good. Now, Seamus asks the question, will you be making single pot still?
No, so only single malt.
Yes.
Only single
always malted barley, no unmalted.
Always malted barley. Yeah. Always malted barley. Yeah. So even though we are using the pot stills, it's not, you know, the definition of pot still is slightly different, but only malted barley. Yeah. So we just want to want to work with the malted barley. It's what gives us good flavors, and we're happy with that.
Excellent, excellent. All right, good. Now, after you've distilled this, we know when it comes off of the still you put it in the wood. Tell us about your interesting wood mix.
Yeah, so I suppose one of the other things then is to keep it as natural as possible is when we do go to bottle, we won't be using caramel or E150. Maybe that's why one of the reasons E is not in our whiskey. But so what we have is each farm goes into roughly forecast breakdown of 50% American first fill. So I suppose 97 or 8% of distilleries will use American first fill or second fill or third or fourth fill casks. So which is what everyone uses, but 50% of each farm goes into that. 20% then goes into American virgin casks. 15% will go into what we call French premium. So really good French wine casks with Mark's contacts with the wine industry. He knows the casks he wants. He knows the casks he will pay for. So we would get casks that maybe would have had 2 wines, so something like 36 months old, and are good casks. The other 15% then we put into what we call VDN, or Vin Natural. So those are sweet fortified wines, sherry, port, Madeira, Riesling, Sauter, and those kind of casks. We also then, in that VDN, we have some rum casks. And what we found starting out was that some of those VDN, sherry, and port casks were genuine, but not giving us the colors that we were hoping because they were old. That's it. So we went off then and we decided we'd buy some French Virgin casks. So we bought some French Virgin casks. So we're going to use them for maybe 9 months and get color from them. We could use more American oak, but then you'd have too much of an American influence. So it's a bit like, you know, we're seeing as we go along, we'll take them out of the French cask and put them back into American force fill.
Okay. Very good. So Greg asked the question, will there be anything, for example, a beer finish, maybe stout or IPA or so on?
Not at the moment. No, not at the moment. I suppose the reason I'd say that is because, you know, for us, I suppose this goes back to the discussion of 60 or 70 or 80% of flavor of whiskey comes from wood. And we would respectfully say no. What we would say is that 100% of your spirit is influenced by 100% of your wood. So I'll say that again. This is the Waterford one. 100% of our spirit is influenced by 100% of our wood. What I mean by that is, if we have, these are not technical terms, if we have shit wood and good spirit, the wood is not going to do anything if it's inert, if it's a third or fourth or fifth or sixth fill, if it's a recharged third fill, what's that? That's not going to do anything for your spirit, for your whiskey. You know, so what we do is we spend 30% of our overall budget on wood. It's the second bill we have. Our highest bill is grain. I won't go into the exact figures, but you're talking a lot of money for wood.
Yep.
And buying good wood, because what's the point in making good spirit and not putting it into good wood?
Very good.
At the end of the day, each cask then will be an ingredient. So we may go to I don't know, as I say to you, Jason, when we're in the tasting room, each one's like an ingredient. You go to a cupboard, you can put it together no matter what way you want. Shout out to Megan here. Megan's boyfriend, fiance, don't worry about it, Megan, is an actuary in America, trained to be an actuary. So we sent all the details to come up with the many permutations of whiskey we could make, and he couldn't come back with an answer because we can make like literally. So if we have
it's a mathematical type of calculation. If I have 16 different ingredients, I have like 4 million different possibilities. So great.
Yeah, so like we have an incalculable amount of whiskey we can release. Yeah.
Very, very good.
The wood for us is very important, and it does influence.
Very good. Luna asks, are there any rules in Ireland concerning the type of wood?
Yes and no. So what the technical file, it doesn't have to be oak, which is different from Scotland. So what the technical file says is that it has to be in timber. I think it says such as oak, less than 700 liters for a period of 3 years, above 40% alcohol. It's not 3 years in a day; it's 3 years.
I know.
So it doesn't even have to be oak. So we are doing some trials with some casks: acacia, mulberry, Andean oak, chestnut, wild cherry. Now wild cherry will knock the socks off you. It's like Marmite. Some people love it, some people hate it. So you don't have to use oak, but it does have to be less than 700 liters, above 40% alcohol when it's over 3 years old.
All right, very good. So there's Andreas here. Do you remember Andy from Whiskey and Vinyl? He was also in the tasting room with you. Yes. He's watching.
Hi, Andy, in the tasting room. Yeah, we're chatting about music and whiskey. It was interesting, actually. Yeah, very good.
All right, very good. Greg says his question, but we just did this. I'm sorry. We talked about not at the moment. All right, good.
Okay.
So very, very good. So we have all the wood. Now, what I did not understand at the beginning, but I think I understand now more, is you do separate all the different farms so you can distill them individually, but there will not be, will there be a farm release, or do you make cuvée of those different farms?
Yeah, so I suppose just We're due to have releases coming up soon. So the original release was due to be the Pilgrimage, which was going to be all of 2016's distillation. So that was.
So I have the webpage here. I want to try to show this bottle because this is so awesome. Wait a second here. I mean, even the bottle you picked was just amazing, right? Yeah. So we have all this information here. And if I click on this, let's see, this bottle is just so beautiful. How did you do that? What is that?
So this bottle, I suppose, when there was lots of discussion on the bottle and the whole lot. So basically, again, it's coming back to Mark, I suppose, and his vision and bits and pieces. And then Mark Newton and other people getting involved as well. John Gavin in True Output. So we're looking at not being able to see the whiskey. People would say, well, of course you need to see the color of the whiskey, but the color of the whiskey for us shouldn't matter. Okay, so it's the color from us is coming from the casks. So if you're buying it on the color of the whiskey, that's not for us going to be a big seller. It should be on the flavor. Okay, so the color will be a bit of a surprise. You won't actually see the color. I suppose a lot of people are a bit put off by that, or not happy with it. Listen, that's what we're choosing to do. So when you look up and you see a bottle of our whiskey and you can't see the color and you say, I'm not buying that, okay, maybe our whiskey is not for you. You mightn't get the premise of what we're trying to do is that you shouldn't be buying it on the color. Where were we going? What was the first question, Jason? Sorry.
So will there be a cuvee of the different farms, or will there be individual releases? Yeah.
So we're supposed to have the Pilgrimage on the 25th of April, which was you have to come to the distillery to get it.
I didn't like that idea, but it's a good idea still.
I can understand why you didn't like it, but I suppose we kind of wanted the first release, try to avoid secondary market, and people who wanted to get it would come to. And that's why we were calling it the Pilgrimage. And it was going to be the first release of many releases. So that was going to be a cuvee. And the other releases then we were looking at, we were going to do two for the EU and Asia, which were Ballykilcavan and Bannow Island. And we were going to do one direct, so an online one, Ratheden. So those were the first ones out the gate.
And what do those names signify?
So Ballykilcavan is where David Welch Chemist is from. Bannow Island is where Ed Harper is from. Ratheden is where Stephen MacDonald is from. We will go with the farm name or the townsland. Like in Ireland, all farmers are in townslands, but they may have farm names as well. So we'll decide it'll either be the farm name or the townsland. So we could have someone like Broomsland is one of the farmers there, and that's his farm. So we could go with that, or we could go with the townsland. So that it's just that's what the names are.
Very good. Will the bottle designs be different per farm release?
So the bottle will be the same, and the labels will be slightly different. Okay. We're kind of still working on those. They'll be slightly different. Obviously,
so the bottle will always be blue.
I won't say always be blue.
Okay.
Never say never, but most of the bottles will be blue. There might be an odd one that might be blue, but that's in discussions at the moment, and for different reasons they might be blue. We'll just leave that there.
Okay, thank you.
So I suppose the idea was to have a cuvee or grand van, so farms together, because Mark has quoted as to say he wanted the most profound whiskey in the world, or a mindfuck of a whiskey. That's what he wanted. And that's what we're doing. So it's we won't have single casks releases. It'll be the single farm will be the smallest bottling, and after that it could be 50 farms, 100 farms, 10 farms. We can do farms geographically. We can do them by variety type. We can do them by distillation year. We can do them by people's first names called Paddy. It doesn't matter.
Why not? Okay.
This is good.
Wow. Very, very good. And so you started distilling in 2015, right?
Yes.
So this is not a 3-year-old whiskey.
Well, I suppose we actually did our first trial run in 2015.
Okay.
And we did our first of our own grain then in 2016. So we're looking at the first the cuvee, the pilgrimage would have been at 3 years old. It's actually marrying together, so it's in casks. So it'll probably at this stage it'll be nearly 3.5 or 4-year-old by the time we get to release it. So yeah, most of the first releases we'll have this year will be a 4-year-old.
Okay.
Again, we're not worried overly about age statements and that because we're not going to release it unless we think it's good enough. So we would put good barley in good spirit in good wood and hope that it tastes equivalent to something that's a bit older, maybe.
Very good. If I remember correctly, you're basically distilling about 1 million liters a year.
Yeah, so we
4 million barrels at the moment.
Yeah, so we buy 2,500 tons of barley a year. That would give us roughly about 1 million LAs. LAs is the revenue term, so that's about 1.4 million liters bulk. And I suppose just to give you an indication, on year 2, that 2,500 tons gave us 1,030,000 LAs. And last year, with the really bad harvest we had in 2018, gave us 937, something like that.
Yeah.
So the exact same amount of grain, but just a really bad year, not using the enzymes and the whole lot. So that equates to roughly a difference of 2 farms, in terms of volume, which is about 400 casks. So it's a lot. Again, it's not ideal, but we want that. So that 2018 harvest will give us a different vintage. In wine terms, it's just a different vintage. So we'll see how that'll mature now as the years go on.
Okay, very good. So Tina asks here from Germany, will something be available in our country? Do you have an exporter or a distributor already?
Yeah, so I suppose we're looking at working with a few different distributors. I think in Germany it's Kirsch. Is it Kirsch?
Kirsch import, yeah.
Yeah, so Christoph Kirsch.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be looking after first. So yeah, hopefully, Tina, we'll have something out. I suppose everything is pushed back slightly now with in the current situation. Yeah. I think the plan was to have something out maybe in May or June, but we're probably have to push that back a bit just with not getting supplies of materials and stuff and bottling and all that. So there's no panic. It's aging away. We get it out. I suppose maybe in France then we're going to use La Maison de Whiskey.
Yep.
In England we're going to use specialty brands. So that's all in works at the moment. So hopefully we get something out sooner rather than later.
Excellent, excellent. Now, will you have a core range later on, or will this just be a lot of small batches?
Define small.
I don't know. Just individual expressions, yeah.
Yeah, so we won't have a consistency.
Right.
Okay, so if you get a bottle, we mentioned Bannow Island. If you get a bottle of Bannow Island, and we're going to say the first one is 1.1. Okay, if you get a Bannow Island 1.1, you really like that. Okay, and you contact us here in the distillery, and you can't get it in Germany, and we can't get it anywhere else. It's gone. 1.2 will be different because we might make it differently. We might use a different cask breakdown. We might have a slightly different ABV. It's after aging an extra 6 or 12 months. So if you like a whiskey and it's going to be gone. So we're not looking for consistency. What we will have is we'll have a consistency in style of spirit that we're making. And then the farmers influence that with the grain, and then the casks will influence it again. And we'll just have, we'll have something different. I suppose the cuvées, when we're doing the cuvées, we can look at, would probably be, we won't be chill filtering either. So we're looking at about 50% alcohol. And we are going to play around. We're going to have a bit of fun with it. The one good thing about it is we've never done this before. There's no Waterford whiskey out there. There's no right or wrong. Someone asked me recently, what style of whiskey are we looking for? Or what are you looking for in a bottle of whiskey? What I would like is someone to open a bottle of whiskey, pour it out, smell it, and smile. Have a taste of it, and go, that's nice. That'll do. We don't need to have people don't need to go into big conversations about it and the different properties and smells and tastes, because everyone with whiskey vinyl we talked about before about rather than having taste notes, they should have music notes. Countries have different vegetables and fruits and stuff, so it's just people to enjoy it. That's what we're looking for, and people to say this is interesting and I need to find out more about this, or I haven't tasted that like this before.
All right, good, very good. Kevin says, I think the non-consistent idea is not bad and supplies us with a variety all the time.
Yeah, and that's it. Like it's we're looking for the best barley possible, and then we're looking to make the best spirit out of that, and then after that, we're going to have a bit of fun making some whiskey.
Very, very good. All right. So last year I was at the Whiskey Live in Dublin 2019, and I saw you, but there was no Woodford stand. Will there be one this year?
Well, I suppose, will there be a Dublin Live this year?
Well, let's assume yes.
That's the thing. No, we're not going to be there this year. Like, we haven't released anything yet.
You would have by then, so.
Yeah, we might do, but no, I don't think we are. I don't think we are. We're it's not on the agenda at the moment. I suppose one of the things is we've been doing this for 6 years without any income.
Mm-hmm.
We the advertising stuff we're doing is social media. It's Twitter. It's online videos. There's a few videos put up of me recently in America where I'm sweating.
Those were actually very well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Editing, the video, the music. I mean, very, very professional.
Yeah, so I suppose we won't be going to trade shows, I'd say, for a little while, just because firstly we haven't taken any money in. If you can appreciate, we're spending a lot of money each year. And when we start selling stuff, which we'll do now, hopefully in the next little while, we'll start looking at what's the best thing for us to do then in terms of our audience. Who do we want to get out to? How do we want them to get the information? Because I suppose our story is a bit different than most distilleries and most whiskies. And maybe it might be more intimate venues. It might be smaller settings. It might be going to Germany and saying, listen, Jason, do you want to set up a group of 40 people or 20 people and we'll have a chat with them? That kind of thing. And, and I suppose, from that then, people are interested to ask questions. They'll maybe mention to another 5 or 6 people and we'll grow like that. So I suppose it's targeting the people that are interested and who will ask the questions and who are curious. And the other thing is, we're not afraid for people to come back and say, it's bullshit what you're doing. Or, we'll have the chat with anyone. We're not saying, well, what we're saying is this is what we want to do. We're not saying other people are wrong or right or whatever. This is what we're doing. This is what we believe in. And so I suppose from that point of view, it's having conversations and talking to people who are interested and who will get what we're doing and that kind of thing.
Very, very good. So are you going to actually later on have brand ambassadors? Or is that also a path you're not going to go? You're not going to go down?
At the moment, no. I suppose our story is not an Irish bigara come here till I tell you kind of a story. It's a story is the barley and everything that happens to barley along the way. So if we have people who are out talking about Waterford, involved in Waterford, they need to understand everything about Waterford. So if someone is out there, they're not going to be a brand ambassador. We won't have brand ambassadors, I'd say. We'll have people who are from the distillery who know as much as they can about Waterford, about how whiskey is made, how the spirit is looked after. It's not, so that's kind of at the moment. again, it's down to budgets and everything as well, like, you know. And, yeah, so I don't think we're going to have brand ambassadors for a while. There'll probably be, I suppose the plan was to have a few of us from the distillery going out to different venues, different places, and just having the chat like this kind of thing and meeting people and talking about it. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, you did something last year which was very unique. You had Scott and Bart from the Scotch Test Dummies, and you had Rex and Daniel then from the Whiskey Tribe come over to your place. So you paid for them to come over, and then you let them do a video there and spend some time with you and so on. And then they...
Don't ask me which I prefer.
I think I know Scott and Bart personally, so I don't know. Those would be my personal favorites. Who knows?
Yeah, Scott and Bart with the Scotch Test Dummies. We went up to Seamus Duggan's farm, and they had Seamus a bit of a character, and we had scones and whiskey. So I think that went down well with the boys. Anyway.
Bart still talks about it, by the way.
Yeah, but listen, I'd well believe it. They enjoyed it anyway. But yeah, what we do is if people want to come over, we get people over, and yeah, we pay for them to come over. Like, you know, we want them to come over. But after that, like, it's up to yourself what you want to say. You like us, you don't like us. You think what we're doing is great, not great, whatever. So, you know, we just want people to come over and have a look. Obviously, yourself and the guys, Bart and Scotch Test and all the guys, you have lots of followers. You have lots of people who are interested in asking questions. And then when you go along and say what you want to say, be good, bad, or indifferent, that's open the conversation. If someone says something that they don't agree with, you know, that's still open a conversation.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, will you have a visitor center one day?
Right?
Will you have a visitor center one day?
Again, yes, but not for a good while, because for us to do a visitor center, we have the old brewery, which is lovely, but will take a lot of money to fix up. So for us, we would rather spend our money on grain, casks, and all the other bits and pieces. And when we get some income in, then we'll start looking at visitor centres. But what we do is if people contact us, obviously not at the moment because everyone is in a lockdown, but if people contact the distillery at info Waterford or Waterford Distillery or at Megan at Waterford Distillery, we try and arrange people to come along. So the people who contact us to date are whiskey enthusiasts or people who are into whiskey. And if we can help them out, they can come along, they can have a look around. So that's kind of what we're doing. We don't do paid tours and stuff like that at the moment. So that's kind of what we're looking at, yeah.
Very
eventually a visitor centre, but not for a good while, I'd say.
Now, we have a couple more minutes before we have to finish here. If any questions are in the chat, please just write them in the comments, and I will actually pass them along to Ned here. Now, you are actually a beer brewer.
Yeah, sorry, Jason, I saw one comment coming up there. Someone said a cat or blah.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with that. Tell me.
Yeah, no, I'm actually a cat. The cat is, so Waterford and Kilkenny are neighbouring counties. Tom O'Regan. So Waterford and Kilkenny are neighbouring counties. I'm actually a Kilkenny man, but working in Waterford. So I'm taking the wages over the bridge back to Waterford.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very good.
Jason.
Now, you are a beer brewer, and you've learned now how to become a whiskey producer. What was the biggest challenge for you during that process?
Well, I'd say I'm learning to become a whiskey producer. I suppose the biggest challenge was trying to find the Waterford style. Mm-hmm. What works well. So for me, I like to break things down to the simplest possible terms. Like, you know, I'm not a huge academic, but I learn by doing. So looked at, you know, all the videos and went to Scotland and visited a few distilleries and stuff and see what they do. But, you know, in the essence, what is distilling like? What are we trying to do? And once, you know, you have an understanding of that, what works for us then? Yeah. So I suppose that was probably the hardest thing, is just getting that balance running. Like, we have an excellent team. Like, we have 4 distillers, and the 4 distillers are brilliant. Like, so they look after the day-to-days. They make sure everything is done properly. And so they brew and distill. Then you have Neil. So it's the whole team that makes sure everything is done right. I actually just want to give a shout out to Jerry Bota, who was one of the fitters who was taken sick there last week. So hello, Jerry. Hope you're feeling better soon. So it's I suppose trying to get where we are with balanced running, trying to make sure that we're all singing off the one hymn sheet, which didn't take much time at all, and just to make sure that we do things to the best of our ability. We do things right.
All right, very, very good. I have a question here. Would Woodford sell some casks to independent bottlers or also to individuals? Do you have a cask program?
No, we're not selling anything.
What a shame.
Yeah, we've had lots of requests, and can totally understand why distilleries and companies sell casks and sell bottles. You know, they need money coming in. We're in the fortunate position that we have really good investors with deep pockets who are willing to stay out for the long haul. So we're keeping all our stock. We're not selling any casks, not pre-selling bottles. And we've had lots of requests, and I think some people have offered silly money for casks. You know, and I can understand it. We had I think we had 6 Icelandic people turn up at the gate there a couple of years ago who had casks in Bruichladdich and followed Mark and the whole lot and did the tour. Lovely people. At the end, then wanted to buy casks, and we said no, and they just couldn't understand why we couldn't get them because
no.
Not doing it. We want to control our own stuff. Nine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, very, very good. So this is good. Now, Waterford Distillery, you're basically almost in the heart of the city. So when you walk down the river, you come to this wonderful, wonderful building. Even behind me, you can see here, almost looks like a type of museum type of futuristic thing. Beautiful.
Yeah. So I suppose Waterford, Waterford is the oldest city in Ireland, and the distillery itself is there from about 1792. It's there from 1792. I think the first mention of Waterford Distillery is on the 14th of February 1792. So it's there 228 years, something like that. There's a rich history of brewing and distillery on the site. And just like if people want to see what we're doing, they can follow me on Waterford Spirit, Waterford Distillery. So I suppose on Twitter, Waterford Whiskey without the E. And all social platforms is probably the best way to follow us and see what we're doing. Are you
more active on Instagram or Twitter?
I'm more active on Twitter.
Okay, I just posted it.
I have an Instagram account. I wouldn't say I'm quite a Luddite, but Mark Media, or Mark Newton, we call him Mark Media. Don't tell him that. Would like a lot more action on the social media, but I'm getting there slowly but surely, Jason. Slowly but surely.
All right, very good. Don't worry. That's good. I'll also post the Instagram account of the distillery so that people can also go there as well. Oh, okay. So we're going to have to end here now. Thank you very much for your time, Ned. This was a privilege being here with you together. I really look forward to making my way over there. Who knows if I'll make it on, what was the 15th on the 5th of September?
The 5th of September is our next date. Yeah. Hopefully that can still go ahead. So that'll be the 25th of April, pushed back to the 5th of September.
Exactly. So it was great to see and hear from you again. Andy says here from Whiskey and Vinyl, give my regards to Neil. Okay, very good.
That's Neil.
So WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Europe, tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. I can't wait to try Waterford. All the best. Last words are yours, Ned.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to try it either, Jason. And the sooner we get it into a bottle and get it out, and just like say thanks to everyone for following Waterford and stay safe, people.
All right, bye. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.